All right. Record it. All right. Hello, my name is Karin Trung. I'm the reporter at CFISD Student News. We are honored to interview you. We want to inform you that this interview is a part of a series of interviews for all candidates. We are a nonpartisan organization dedicated to keeping the students of CFISD informed, and this interview helps us fulfill the mission. We want to let you know that this meeting will be recorded and potentially uploaded to social media. Additionally, at the end of the review, we will ask an extra set of questions that our district affairs committees would like to know. With that out of the way, let's begin with the interview. All right. So we're going to begin with the first questions, general questions. Some of your fellow people running in your slate will probably be asked this question. I'll take off with these questions. All right. Question one. Who are you? Where are you from? What position are you running for? And most importantly, tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Lesley Guilmart, and I am running for position 5 on the Cy-Fair ISD Board of Trustees. I was born and raised in Durham, North Carolina. I went to college at NYU, and from there, I joined Teach for America, which sent me to Houston ISD to teach high school English for 2 years, for a 2-year commitment. And I was at Austin High School to start my teaching career. And honestly, I had never thought about moving to Texas, or I'd never visited Texas before. I didn't plan on education being my forever career. But I got here and I just realized I loved working with young people. I love working with high school age students, particularly. I love teaching English language arts, and I love the Houston area. And so I stayed and ended up teaching high school English for 10 years before moving into instructional coaching and administration. So in all, I've been an educator in the Houston area at this point for 22 years. I'm married to a Bridgeland High School teacher. Both of my kids go to CFISD schools. I've worked in CFISD, just heavily committed to public education and to making sure that this wonderful district can get back on track.
Okay, that's good to hear. Unfortunate that your husband's is teaching at Bridgeton. We were teachers at other schools, but just certain that.
Keep bias out of the way, Carden.
Okay, sorry, my bad. But I was also wondering, what was it like teaching at it's a little separate question, but what was it like teaching at HISD? It must have been a very interesting experience because it was like urban, and it might have been I mean, you went to NYU, so it's not that unfamiliar, but it was definitely an interesting environment, wasn't it?
For sure. I spent 2 years at Austin High School, my placement school, which was in the second ward. And so certainly, I mean, I grew up in an urban area, then went to college in a very, very urban area. So that wasn't new to me. And the school at the time was, I want to say 97, 98% Latino students. And that was my first time really being immersed in an environment where, people were speaking Spanish all around me, and I wasn't a fluent Spanish speaker. There was so much for me to learn about the culture of Texas, about all the different cultures from Central and South America and Mexico that the students that I taught brought into school with them every day. And I had to learn how to teach. And so it was just, wow, drinking from a fire hose, honestly, especially for the first year. Kind of got my feet under me for the second year. And then I left for a few years and taught in a charter school, came back to HISD for 4 more years and taught at Heights High School, which was known as Reagan High School at the time, and had a fantastic 4 years there. I got to teach AP literature, which I absolutely loved. I taught 9th graders in the morning and seniors in the afternoon, which is like quite a mental shift to make as a teacher, and just loved the students, loved the community, and I really enjoyed my time in HISD.
That sounds interesting. I mean, to be honest, if I were you, I'd teach 10th grade first to get the rough part out. Right? And then credits in our freshmen, so that is a fair thing. But yeah, that thank you for answering. All right, second question, a little interesting. How has CFIC impacted you, and how does it influence the decision making you will make as a member of the school board?
Wow. The CFISD has impacted me and my family in so many ways. So we moved into CFISD boundaries in 2009 when we bought our first house. We didn't have children yet, but we knew we wanted to have children. And we, like many people, moved here for the schools. We lived in the Fairbanks area. We were actually just inside Beltway 8 at the time, and in the Jersey Village feeder pattern. And um let's see. I mean, my daughter entered kindergarten in 2016, I want to say. So that was my first foray into being a CFISD parent. And I was just immediately impressed by the level of communication, the professionalism, the wonderful experience my daughter was having in kindergarten. She was at Post Elementary. And then a couple years later, I applied for a role as an instructional coach and got to work at Cy-Fair High School. And I I mean, I love that school so much. It's such a special place. Like, the student population so beautifully reflects the overall demographics of the Houston area and really the nation. And I got to be a part of helping faculty and staff really hone their practices to help the students at Cy-Fair High School thrive. It was such a privilege. And frankly, within a couple of years of working there, I said to my husband, "You've got to get a job in Cy-Fair ISD. It's a great place to be. It was a great place to be an employee." Again, things seemed to roll pretty smoothly. I felt treated with respect. The curriculum was really strong, just great experience. And so my husband started applying for jobs, and we then moved into the Woods feeder pattern. And I was just like 10 minutes down the road from Cy-Fair High School, and really got to start being immersed in that community. And so I've just put down roots. We made it through COVID in CFISD as both parents and teachers. We experienced that, and that's when I got really involved in advocacy. And it just took off from there. So I've been an advocate and serving in CFISD on sort of a more volunteer basis and an organizing basis since about 2021.
Yeah, CFIC is a great district. I went here from pre-K, not even just pre-K all the way till 12. There's some things that the district has done for me when I was in elementary that I still am like trying to figure out to this day, and I'm thankful for. We do have a pretty good district. I mean, Chris, were you here from K to 12 or?
Fortunately, I was not here from K to 12. I transferred in at fourth grade. I was in Aldine from K to 3, and in the fourth grade, I transferred to Sampson Elementary, and then climbed up. Stayed at Goodson. Actually supposed to go to Cy Woods, but I came to.
Oh, nice.
Like, yeah, it's we've grown. I mean, even Chris, spent 4 years out of it, site there, and he came in and still spent most of his career. I bet you enjoyed our district much more. Like,
Yes, very much so.
we're a much better district. But yeah, all right. Next, all right. But speaking of which, when it comes to obviously campaigning, it's a little very, as we talked earlier, it's very difficult and hardworking. But tell us, if you can, how does your campaign slate work, and what are the other candidates you are running with like? Are they great people? Do you want to get to know them more? They're like things that you clearly know these people know much better than me.
Wow. I mean, yes, campaigning is very hard work, and we're not even in the thick of it yet. I am learning so much through this process. And it's an adventure, and it's just a privilege to be trusted by the folks who've trusted me to run. I am running on a slate So there are 3 of us who are pro public education candidates. And what a slate means is that we're coordinating our efforts. We're not running against each other. We're running alongside each other. So each of us signed up to run in a different position. So we're not in competition with one another. And what we're able to do as a slate is share resources, share information, share calendars, so that our time and energy and money, frankly, goes a lot farther than it would if we were each running individually and were coordinated. And so, Kendra Camarena and Dr. Cleveland Lane Jr. are my slate mates. They're both educators, they're both parents in the district, and are just wonderful humans. I have no doubt by the time this is all over that the 3 of us will be very good friends. We're spending a lot of time together. We're getting to know each other really quickly. There's a lot of mutual respect and shared values there.
I couldn't imagine that, but yeah, campaigning is quite a pain in the slate system. I mean, some people truly, don't really understand the full campaign system, and I'm very thankful that you actually explained it for our audience here. But yeah, speaking of which, the next one, it's a little familiar question. I'm actually gonna skip over it. But I'll move on to our next question. What are the policies you plan on implementing or reversing?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's hard for me to answer that question super directly or concisely as much as I want to, because there's a lot that I'll have to learn once I'm on the board in terms of what the constraints are, what's most urgent, etc. Um, I'm pretty concerned with the direction that the district has taken in a lot of ways under the current school board majority. And um, I think there's a lot to start repairing and then building. I would like to look at getting our librarians back and getting our libraries back open full time. Research supports that they're absolutely pivotal for student literacy and engagement. And when I was at Cy-Fair High School, actually, for I want to say 3 out of the 5 years I was there, the office I shared with the other instructional coaches was a little room at the back of the library. And so I got to witness firsthand how many students were in and out of that library before school, during lunch, after school, coming in with their classes, having club meetings there, doing crafts, just finding a safe, quiet space to be. And I just know how important that is. So that's a big one that I would like to prioritize. Oh gosh, there's so much more. And I guess I'll just share an analogy I like to use, which is that it's really super easy and quick to break stuff, right? If you hold a crystal vase over a tile floor and you drop it, what happens?
It breaks.
It breaks, it shatters, right? And that was quick. That happens really quickly. It's easy to break stuff. It's a lot harder to sweep up all that glass. And Lord, if you're going to glue it back together, right? That's a lot more effort. It's a lot more painstaking. And that's what my slate mates and I are looking at. If we all win this election in November, there will then be a 4-person pro public ed majority on the school board again, because we have 1 pro public ed trustee right now. So this is a really high stakes election. All 3 of us have to win to really make a difference. And then once we get there, the hard, painstaking work of repair and of figuring out what we can and should tackle first will begin. And so that's why it's so important to have people who are experienced in education and willing to just do the detail-oriented hard work of starting to right the ship.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long road for many. I would definitely love to see how things go for y'all. It's gonna be a rough one this year, I think. but it'll be an interesting one. Now the next question, the last question for my end, is how will you work with the state legislators and federal representatives to improve Cy-Fair ISD, whether it be from the aspects of funding or policy in general?
Great question. At the state level, we need really strong advocates. So much of our challenges come down to inadequate funding, and that's a result of the state not providing the funds that we need per student to be able to provide all of the services that we know students need in order to thrive, right? Because it's not only about teachers and instructional materials and school buildings. We've got to have counselors and nurses and libraries and, English language learning programs and programs for our special education students. I mean, it goes on and on. We need wraparound services for students who maybe don't have access to the kind of healthcare or nutrition that they need at home. And all of that costs money, and we don't get the funding that we need per pupil. And that is partly a choice of the people who we elect to represent us in Austin, right? Our state representatives, our state senators. And so we've got to, as trustees, really strongly advocate for our district in no uncertain terms and make sure that all of our representatives understand the stakes. And, the community, we depend on the community to pay attention to what our elected officials are and are not choosing to fund. And remember that when they go to the ballot for those elections. I think the next one will be in fall of 2026. The federal government gives us less of our funding than the state does, but it's still incredibly important, the funding that we get from them. You may have heard that funding was held up recently. At the federal level, it is now being released to school systems, and I'm not sure if there will be any consequences just from the delay. But again, advocacy. We have senators and representatives in Washington, D.C. that need to hear from trustees, and trustees have, I believe, a responsibility to educate the community so that it's not just our voices advocating, but it's everyone's.
Yeah, that's a good response. Yeah, trustees. One of the jobs that the trustees that should be on paper is that their job is to also educate the people in our system. When I attend all the board meetings, I learn more by the minute. It's just like, yeah. But yeah, it's a unofficial job description, and I think there will be something essential when you execute the duties of office. But that's it on my end for now. We'll switch to questions that we actually generated specifically for you after looking into who you are. And I'll pass that over to Chris.
Alrighty. Before we begin, I just want to mention I do have a bit of a stutter problem, so if that happens, we'll just pretend like it never happened.
No problem.
Alrighty. So first question. How do you think CFISD can better incorporate diverse perspectives into the classroom specifically?
Into the classroom specifically. Well, I have to say, as a former instructional coach for English, there was incredibly promising momentum on that in my experience, in terms of getting really robust classroom libraries into individual English classrooms, which gave kids a great selection of books by diverse authors to read. And we also made a point at Cy-Fair High School to make sure our faculty was aware, like, hey, it's Ramadan. We may have students fasting right now. Our librarian did an amazing job of highlighting the various religious holidays that that go on throughout the year. And so I know for a fact that a lot of those book titles are under scrutiny, have been under scrutiny for the last several years, right? With real concerted efforts made at restricting students' access to those. And so what I would like to see initially is looking at where we can identify what was going well before, where did we have positive momentum before, and how quickly can we get back on track with that, right? Because those books still exist. Like, we have a lot of those resources. They're just maybe being underutilized right now, possibly. And so looking at just kind of lifting that, and there's also just, I think, among the teachers, an atmosphere of fear around that. And we want our employees to feel safe to in a standards aligned way provide students with access to diverse perspectives.
Yes, ma'am. That is definitely what we need, especially right now, and especially I love the point that you brought up earlier. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because we do need to incorporate those things back into what that positive momentum. Next question. I know you've kind of touched up on this a little bit here, but what are your views on book omissions in school libraries?
Well, there's my view as a parent and my view as an educator and my view as a potential trustee, right? And so I'll start that as a parent. Um, I have a right at the end of the day to have input on what my own children who live under my roof and are my responsibility have access to reading or not reading. Okay. As does every parent in the district ultimately have that right. And I remember from my very first year in CFISD 2017, before a lot of the book reconsideration hysteria started up, that already there was awareness amongst the teachers, like, we need to have alternate texts available for students in case a parent objects to a certain book. We need to have choice for our students. And then as the concerns and the book challenges really kicked up, the district really stepped up their policies, routines, and procedures for getting parent permission, for making sure parents were aware. And so already those features are in place to give individual parents and families autonomy over what their kids can have access to. And I think there's, among a number of folks in the community, it's been misrepresented that there was just a free-for-all and with parents not having the right to have input. And that parental access to having control over what their kids see and read has only increased since then.
Alrighty, that was a very strong point, I would have to admit. But what our next question is, how do you plan to support a curriculum that encourages critical thinking and as well as creativity within students?
Well, we have to start by having as many folks as possible on the board who value critical thinking. That is, as an educator, the thing that transfers for students into adulthood, going out into the world and navigating a future that to some degree we can't predict, right? We just can't always teach children, students, every fact or figure or skill that they're going to need in the future, because that's just constantly evolving. But what we have the deepest responsibility to do is to help our students to be critical thinkers. So that comes down to students having access to all of the like relevant standards aligned most current information for their curriculum and having opportunities to read, write, and discuss, to do hands-on projects, and just make sure that as much as we are held accountable in terms of our standardized test scores, much of which are mostly multiple choice, that we continue to hold our classrooms, our curriculum to a high standard for giving students the opportunity to do projects, collaborate, read, write, discuss. Oh man, you're asking a longtime educator this question. I'm actually going to stop talking because I could probably talk for the rest of the afternoon about this and see if you have a follow-up for me.
I actually do have a follow-up. I see that you pinpoint a lot about resources, and I just want to ask, how would you be able to ensure equitable access to like technology and those other resources you're talking about across the district?
Yeah, I mean, that's a nuanced thing to do, right? Because we've got so many different needs, so many different courses, different age groups, and students coming into school with varying levels of access to technology and books and things like that at home. And so to be equitable, you really have to acknowledge that and take a look at a number of variables and make sure that you are asking the question whenever you're making decisions, who did we not think of? Who did we not hear from? It's really important to me that we get input from a diverse cross section of stakeholders from across the community on a lot of these big decisions because, hey, I may be an educator and a mom, and I may know a lot, and I still only know what I know, right? And I'm not here just to serve my next door neighbor whose experience might be a lot like mine. I'm here to serve everyone. And so it's also about pausing and saying, like, who do we still need to hear from? Who do we need to ask? What perspective is missing here? It's about coming in with that disposition, not just assuming that you know what's best, but that you need to constantly be learning from the community that you're in order to make sure that you're not accidentally leaving something out.
That's very strong, Miss Gilmore. Um, that's it on my end. That's all the questions I have, and I'm gonna pass it over to Carden about any other extra questions of that sort that he has. So Carden.
All right, thank you, Chris. So some of these questions are as serious as or very deep as the ones we asked previously. Some of them are really trivial. So we'll get started. All right. Question one: with the 25-26 school year starting in about a week and a couple days, what's your message to the students of CFISD?
Come to school. You can't learn and thrive if you're not there. So that's really for my secondary students who have a little more autonomy about, where they're going every morning. Come to school, make the most of it. Know that your teachers and administrators and every adult who works in the building is there because of you, because they want to make sure that you have access to the very best future. So be nice to them. Give them some props for showing up for you. They're working very, very hard to make your lessons as engaging as possible and give you everything that you need. And they love every last one of you. And I think I speak for all educators when I say, like, we want you to have a really great year and are working hard every day to do our best to make that happen.
Yeah, that is true. Teachers do really a lot, and they definitely need to be more appreciated and all of that. I know they're very essentially important too, especially considering me and Chris are heading into our senior year. and they are an essential element to, telling the mission officer of who we are. And that's things that people forget. But yeah, I like that message. But yeah. All right. So the next one, we're gonna go a little trivial. What is your favorite elementary, middle, and high school in CFISD? Is it
Why are you putting me in that position? I cannot answer that question. I love them all. Now, there are some that I know better than others, right? So, I'm going to shout out an elementary school though. I'm going to shout out Wilson Elementary School. I'm going to be there next week delivering a hot breakfast to the teachers with my nonprofit organization, Cypress Families for Public Schools. Wilson, we love you. Can't wait to see you next week. And I also did sign up for bus buddies at Wilson Elementary School. So shout out to Wilson because they're kind of on the border of Cy-Fair and Katy, and we adopted them on purpose because we want to make sure they got all the love and recognition they deserved.
Well, I was looking for the answer regarding Cypress Woods High School, but that works. Anyway, but yeah, another question. Let's get back to, a little more serious things. As you are campaigning, how are you able to connect with voters, and what have you heard from them?
Great question. So I have we'll start with social media and the good old internet. So I've got a website, Lesley for CFISD.com, where folks can go and see a little bit more about who I am, what my platform is, my priorities for the district should I be elected, and why I'm running in the first place. And people can also sign up. I send out occasional email updates. I would say my most popular digital connection with the community is my candidate Facebook profile, Lesley for CFISD. It's very active, lots of participation from the community. And what's really exciting is that as election season's ramping up, I'm noticing on Facebook, folks are just reaching out and asking questions. What is your stance on cutting bus routes if, the budget gets tight again? What is your stance on censoring instructional materials? And so there's some great direct back and forth happening there. But we block walked for the first time yesterday. We knocked on our whole team of volunteers knocked on 300 doors and had 137 conversations, and we're able to recruit a bunch of volunteers. We've got yard signs, we've got t-shirts, we have individuals volunteering to host meet and greets in their home where they invite their friends and neighbors and they can just get to know us and talk to us more informally. We're going to be going out into the community pretty much anywhere that will have us to greet people and get to know them. I want to say this week I have something on my calendar every single evening. So it's really a combination of social media and then also just face-to-face conversations with people.
That is a good response. Campaigning is, even if regards the results, it teaches you something, and that's, what the people want. And that's what many people, I'm not hitting on Austin or Washington, need to know. But yeah, the next question, last one, aside from the set of questions I mentioned earlier we're going to ask, is how can students like me and Chris and many other in Cy-Fair ISD student news, or students in general, can be more involved in decision making at the district level?
Ooh, great question. Well, look, this is happening more and more, and I think it's great. Come to board meetings. You can actually sign up to speak on certain agenda items or even speak on anything you want. And so here's how I like to do that. Here's my tip for that. Attend or watch online the work session. That's the first meeting that happens each month. I think it's usually on a Thursday. Yeah, this Thursday. That's right. 6 p.m. And So you get kind of a preview of the details of a lot of the agenda items at the work session. And then, so what a lot of people do is they reflect on what they heard at the work session, and then they'll sign up to speak at the following board meeting, the following Monday, and actually get to speak and advocate for whatever it is before the board makes their final vote on it. So that's a great way to do it. You can directly email your trustees as well if you want to be a little more detailed, because you're limited to about 2 minutes of speaking at a board meeting. So those are two ways that are top of mind. I know the superintendent has a student advisory council, and if I'm elected, I would really like to look at how we can get student voices and interaction more directly with the board as well, because ultimately the trustees represent you guys and your interests. And unless you're 18, you don't actually get to vote, right? So that's another thing. If you are 18, if you are eligible to vote, go ahead and get registered to vote. The League of Women Voters should be coming through your campus to your social studies class with voter registration information. And then if you can vote, awesome, do that. Even if you can't, go talk to your parents, talk to the grown-ups in your life who can vote, and let them know that this election is happening, because so much of the direction of this district, frankly, is going to be determined by who has the school board majority come November.
I can testify to a couple things, like, for example, work sessions. Not only that they're like significantly shorter, so you can come in and then come out, which is much more convenient and gives you a preview of the next meeting, whether it be intense or not. I can testify to that. I've attended, I think, every single board meeting since 2023, with the exception of all the board meetings in fall 2024. And we're actually going to probably send some of our student reporters down there.
Great.
Actually,
Tell them to come see me. I'll say hi.
that sounds amazing. But yeah, I can also agree. I think one of our main missions of the committee that's conducting all these interviews, the District Affairs Committee of CFISD Students News, is to interview all the candidates and make sure that the graduating seniors are able to make their last decision for Cy-Fair ISD. I like to consider their vote the last gift to Cy-Fair ISD. And I think it's very important that we're able to make sure all their seniors are informed and all that. And yeah, hopefully this election definitely picks the right choice for where our district goes. But yeah, I think that should be most of it. I'll actually stop the reporting right now, and then I'll ask you the post-interview questions. Off you